lot going on.
We're running a little late here, we should get going. We got kind of a lot of things on the agenda tonight. Are we on? So I'm just trying to figure out how to deal with this. We've got what's gonna become snow possibly pretty soon, so our highwayman might want to have a nap before the night. So we have a few people here to give us a small presentation. We have a public meeting at 7:30 to have on the sidewalk project. So let's try to get through as much of this as possible before 7:30. Maybe starting, I'm actually just gonna start with this fella who called me the other day. He's got this one issue. This is John Redden from the hangar. Mm-hmm. And when we did that whole light thing, light switch over, and I'm still trying to deal with that one out on mechanic. The guy will not respond to me.
I've got a possible solution to that that I'll bring up when we talk about it later.
You guys are requesting an additional LED light at the pond area, which is where that
Yes, we use that for our parking area.
that's right.
Yeah, and the issue is at night, when people are doing shift changes and that kind of stuff, there's a light in the beginning and there's a light at the end. The center, there's nothing in there.
Yeah.
I met with 3 Mountain Power and they suggested that I propose a light from you people, and if not, then I have to take an alternative method. So we are requesting that we can get one additional street light, so it would help.
Was there one there before that they took down, or? I didn't think there was.
I think what he's thinking,
When the lights got changed.
they got more focused. You lost that blood.
Yeah, that's right. The other one spread out more.
Correct.
So they're on the same side of the street as you're parking, or are they on the sidewalk side?
Same side.
Are there streetlights on the other side too? On the sidewalk side? No?
Not right there. And then what he had suggested is, well, you could take care of it privately by putting one on the inside of the parking lot, but then you're really lighting the pond, not the,
And it was also instructed or told by Green Mountain that I could not put a matching light because that's not
It's a
possible. I
right.
have to put a different type of light out there, and that would take away from the whole thought of making all lights the same.
have we kind of figured out what is our cost per light now that we've done this whole transition? You know,
No,
because they're all the
I
same.
don't know what it's all the same, but it's very reasonable.
Yeah. No, I think, again, we're having a similar issue up on
Mechanic Street.
Mechanic Street. I mean, the question becomes, do we light our streets for the purpose of the streets or for the purpose of the businesses who have parking lots on the streets? And I don't really know the answer to that. Probably both.
I think it's.
Where are you trying to put the light?
On our upper parking lot, we call it our upper parking lot.
Yeah.
Which our parking lot runs beside the pond.
Right, well, you're calling the pond the river, but. yeah,
Correct,
okay.
it's a pond for us.
Right, across from that White House, that's where you want it, right there?
No, not by the White House. Up further than the stone building, there is no actual house.
Yeah,
It's that empty section.
yeah, okay.
You'll get out through there, and there is one pole that is available. It does not have wires crossing the street because they can't do it on a wire goes across the street. There is one pole available to them to put the light out. Like I said, I met with the Green Mountain Power guy, and he suggested this first, and then if this didn't go through, then I have to try something else.
Now, is this something that before you noticed the lighting was better with the other lights?
The other lights, it was more broad.
Yep.
The LEDs
So it
were
lit
correct.
more.
They only serve certain areas. It's
less light pollution, but-
You get
Yeah.
more side light out of it.
So if that's the case, I mean, my opinion would be that
We have to give
if something that we did changed the situation, we should be a part of the solution too. So I would,
You said there is a pole there?
There is.
Okay, so it's not a matter of putting in a new pole, it's a matter of attaching a light to
Poles
an
there,
existing
The
pole.
wires were right by the pole. I forget Dave, I think, from Green Mountain.
Yeah, who is it you talked? You don't know his last name? Was that,
no,
it's not the
no,
same
I-
guy? Is it? All right.
I do have it written down.
It's okay. We'll find it.
So is this pole along the street?
It is off the main road that goes along the street. It's like a mid-car length, I guess you'd say, off the street. Because our cars park in between all the poles up through there.
And what was the purpose of the pole?
It's just
the pole itself is
Regular
probably just,
power poles
It's
going
connecting
along the road.
power from, it's just
a power pole.
Power lines.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they're all
Okay.
regular power poles that can distribute all your power, telephone, cable.
Okay.
I would,
You know, I have no problem with the whole idea of the lights is more for safety, is that's what we want them for. And it's a walking village, people are walking around, and we want lights where there's people walking around. And don't want them if it's just cars, because cars don't need the lighting.
But people coming in and out of a,
No,
dark parking lots are no fun.
What would also help, the sidewalk actually goes to the other side of the street there, so that would also help your sidewalk area on the other side of the street.
Do you see any reason that's a problem, Mr. Highwayman?
No,
Yeah.
actually it would be good, because,
For
I mean, the
everything.
car and the road and plowing, it's all pretty tight up there, so a little more light wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. We'll call our
So-
connection in Green Mountain and have it put it.
If it's necessary, I'll entertain a motion to accept that proposal.
I'll move that.
Second.
All's in favor?
Okay.
I'll contact the fellow and we'll just, like I said, there's some other ones we're working on, some hopefully that'll get them down here
I
and do it.
appreciate your help with this.
Good. Thank you. Take care. It's nice when they're simple like that. Let's do highway report.
Okay, well, I mean, as everybody knows, winter's upon us. We were working on some maintenance issues. I had Matt up the garage the other day. Some tires we need on our backhoe, they're $1,000. You know, oil pan in one truck, it's $1,000. Everything's $1,000. It's crazy. So, you know, we really need to do something. We had a conversation that I brought to the board. They'll bring it up in executive. We've got a offer on our old trackless. Somebody who has another relic like ours and needs some pieces off of it. I mean, it's a pretty reasonable offer for it, so. We have that. Salt, we're pretty good on salt right now. So really,
Looking at the accounting for the salt. How many outstanding invoices do you have for salt that haven't been accounted for
One.
ever? Just one? The most recent, yeah,
yeah.
okay.
I just got it today, it's $1,700. So, well, remember at the end of last year, we used everything we had, and we didn't have anything in our shed to start. So, you know, we gotta stay on the plus side with it, everybody calling salt shortage, salt shortage, salt shortage. I mean, we can't be without it, you know. We're such a small user, when they get screaming, you know, they'll run to the big guys first. That's just life, so.
No, I think that's fine.
Norm, how are you feeling about your budget at this point?
I don't know. I haven't had a chance to look at it. You know, you guys, you know, you don't sit a day in my shoes, and I've invited you many times to come up and visit. Nobody ever comes except for one of you, you know. I work like many men all day long. You know, I don't have time to sit at a computer and go over
Okay.
things, you know.
No, I
We-
just-
We buy, maintenance right now, I just told you we did, I could go out tomorrow and spend $3,000 without a drop of a hat. We put our last big, plow blade on. They're $2,800 a piece. We had 3 of them, you know, when we bought the truck. You know, I need to go buy them for $3,000-4,000, because we don't have a spare. If I break one tonight, we're out of it. And, you know, that's the part of the business that I don't think everybody really understands, you know. And again, you gotta come up and live a day in my world and see. I mean, we worked on a truck the other day. Matt was up there with a sander, 3 days on a lathe with a machine shop, back and forth. I mean, if it hadn't have been me, you guys, it'd cost you another $800 in parts. You know, that's it. And I don't think very.
I think all
appreciative
she was asking is, because we just got this document that just shows where we're at, and I think, I was looking at some of those points where there's, you know, some overshots. But then there's the points about the money coming back in, and that's not always accounted for in those categories, and so I think that's a good conversation we all should have, but we should have it kind of in our budget meeting, which really should happen, maybe this month before some.
You know, if you're looking at our new equipment thing, you know, we got $9,000 back that was put back in there, but it didn't, it's not showing up the way the accounting is, so.
You'll see
You
it
know.
tonight.
Yeah. Was there any particular thing that looked alarming
Well-
to you?
Well, it's, as you say, it's hard to know by looking at the budget how much, though Mary has indicated sometimes where it's been offset by grants, but just looking at it as it's laid out here, I was concerned that many of the budget, a number of the budget categories, we were overspent. And we're approaching the midpoint in the year. So I'd like to understand it better, so if we need to make some corrections, if we can, this would be the time to do it.
Just another point to make, unlike our previous treasurer would do these half-year things, but wouldn't divide out the half-year. And in this case, I think what I noticed is that, so this is for July through December,
Well,
and the amount of money you're seeing there is what was allocated for July through December, not the money that was allocated from July through next June.
Correct, this is just July through
So it's just a
December.
6-month figure, both
And the
totals.
actuals are not fully December because
Right.
not all the December bills are in here.
Right.
Give me a for instance on one that you would have a concern with.
well, maybe I just need a primer on how to
Yeah.
understand it, but the last two columns on this, the
Right.
budget balance and the percent remaining.
Right, that means that okay, so let's look at
So,
highway.
yes, okay.
So for instance, for highway wages, there's $40,000 of the remaining budget. There's
Right.
47% of the budget yet remaining to be spent. So
That's what I thought.
considering that would this say that we may be slightly over? Yeah, probably.
2.5%.
But in significantly, maybe not. Clearly, there's other things where there's only a fraction spent down in the highway maintenance and the salt and sand. There's, for instance, on the maintenance, there's 87% of the budget yet remaining unspent. On the new equipment, where that appears to be over budget, Norm's right. You'll see, I've got another report for you tonight, where you'll see the revenue side of
Covers
it.
that, and
Revenue
that's
is
helpful
in.
to have that.
Yeah,
But vehicle maintenance and gas,
Right.
47% left, and we've got 7 months left
Right.
of the year. And garage expenses, which isn't a terrifically big item, but it looks like there's only a small amount
10%,
left there. And I'm not picking on highway.
no,
But,
it is-
but,
it
yeah,
is something
but
to
I
be
mean, I think
concerned with.
this is the time to, this would be a good time to really review it. And I think using the budget process would be,
That's what we're gonna, and that's what we generally do. And I'm not alarmed too much by much of this, because of the way that things, and as you broke down those monthlies.
Right.
That's gonna be so great where we're
Yeah,
gonna
the
start
monthly
realizing that a
part
certain
can show
month
you
is
more.
typically more. And so you make sure
Right.
that your 6-month budget might actually include 8 months' worth of the year's money, because you know that.
that's right.
Which we're not doing yet.
Right.
So it's hard to.
Yeah.
I think there's no argument, I don't think Norm would have one with it, that, that we've got maintenance issues and, and those are, hopefully some of these other categories will come in a little light and then we'll be okay, but it's a little too early, I think, to tell, just as always establishing a new budget, in early January is a little too early to kind of tell what.
And the other thing, when we do the next budget, we'll actually have detail to be able to track our budget by the general ledger number. The only thing I knew was this. This is the only thing I had to go by a budget for, so you're consolidating 7 or 8 different line items into one line on here.
I
And
think
I
we're-
think there'll be a little more clarity.
Right.
At least for me, I'll understand it better.
And as
When I
time
know.
goes by, we get familiar with where these expenses occur.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
if you don't know, you just kind of spread it out.
Right,
But some
right.
things occur in the wintertime, others in the summer.
And the other thing that I did with this, which I don't know if that's the right way to do it or not, is I'm putting the expenses in the month that the expense occurred, not when it's paid. So for instance, we're paying a lot of bills now in December, but you'll notice that if you looked at the detail where it's spread out, some of them are December, like the payroll ones, but some of them are really in November because that's probably when the bill was.
So it's kind of like an accruals,
Yeah,
modified accrual
yeah.
system.
Yeah, so you're always gonna be in that situation when we get to the end of the year, where we don't have all the invoices paid yet. So that's why we'll have to have a little bit. And I brought some kind of, a little bit of cash flow stuff so we can look at later too.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Norm?
I just had one. I had mentioned to her earlier, Jonah had emailed me the wayside markers in. It was in about a month ago, and we talked about maybe trying to get it in the ground, and it didn't happen. And he just offered up that he's willing to do it. I said I'd be willing to help, but if Norm preferred to be part of it, we just wanted to give him a heads up. If whether he does or doesn't,
Right.
it can be handled by us, but obviously if you prefer, he's going to be dealing with it and make sure it's put in properly and put it in the right spot, then we just want to give him a heads up that we'll do
Yeah, we
it
can
in the
talk
spring or
about that in the
something.
spring, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, whether we go dig the holes for you and then you guys come down. I don't know if you're gonna do it in a ceremony type or just utilitarian, just go to put it in.
I assume we'll just put it in and any kind of ceremony we'll do
Leave that for somebody
after the
else.
fact, yeah. So I'll just reply back to him, we'll be in touch sometime in the spring when we can get it in the ground.
Do we need to store it and put it in the side of this building for the winter?
I think he's got it inside, he's got ample, so he didn't mention that, so I think he's gonna hold on to it and he'll take care of it. If he does mention it, I'll offer that up.
We
but
can
I think-
find a place
I think
for
we're
it,
all
yeah.
set.
Okay. Then I would say that we could let Norm go have a nap, if that's what he needs to do.
You got anything that's gonna affect me? Right. The lights, I went, and I don't know how you're gonna end up with on the Mechanic Street lights, but on Mechanic Street, when you go past our garage where it stops, there is not another light.
Is that the
from
cemetery?
Mechanic to Overly, all down Madison.
George Street has one. Isn't there one right at the end of George Street? I was actually paying attention when I went by. There's
Maybe
one,
there's-
I think it
It's not
stops
right,
the,
it's back on to George then, because
But
it's
I-
dark.
I mean,
it may be that the
ends
light's
where
out then,
pretty
because there's a
sidewalks.
light. I went by during the day, so the light wasn't actually on, so I don't know if it was actually on, but there's a light coming up. I thought it was George Street, because I saw in your email that you thought the last one was at the cemetery. I think there's one at the end of George Street. Do you happen to
What?
remember? A street light
Oh, yeah.
right at the corner of.
By your
right at the
barn?
corner of Mechanic and-
George Street.
But isn't there one right at the corner of Mechanic and George? Yeah, so there is one at George
It
Street.
either is out or what, or the concern that the neighbors in that neighborhood are having is that long distance between those two
Sure,
spots.
yeah. Oh, I just want to, yeah.
It's like across from Steve Goodrich's and the woods on one side and, so no,
Very
we're,
dark in that area.
I think two more lights there would be nice.
I think nice sidewalk off Leon's side. That's what I think. We've had many discussions about that.
What's that walk, crawl, run? Is that the one you use?
Yeah.
Well, he's already got the path there, so
Is he, are you for it or against it, Leon?
he's not.
So that's what I'm gonna be doing when I contact this guy, is I really wanna get that resolved. This isn't since July that's been going on over there, and I thought it was resolved, and then clearly it wasn't, so. All right, thank you, Norm. How long is your presentation?
10 to 5 minutes.
Would you like to do that rather than wait till 8?
I would love to do that.
Okay.
We'll make it short.
We'll give you 7 minutes.
Just some background, this is Lake Perrin Board coming to present a proposal of a building that they want to build on the property and how they propose to fund it.
Okay, I guess I'll set this over here so you can all kind of gather around and kind of see.
Yep.
Sure.
Let's see.
And that's the building.
That is the building. The reason we're doing it, we've had over 5,000 people at our lake in the last 2 years. We are seeing more and more people come to the lake, and we've been doing a lot of repairs to the lake. You can see, let's see, we've had bonfires in the fall, we had pumpkin carving. In the summer, we've had great fireworks. We have lots and lots of people. In the winter, we just bought a snow blower, so we can, snow blow skating trails on.
We're gonna have skating at the lake like nobody's business.
Yes, yes.
Fantastic.
We have also, this one says 5,000 guests for the last 2 years. Sorry, everyone
Can you
can't
see
see
that,
it.
guys? It's our dessert cafe.
Okay, this is, we rebuilt the dock, and we raised $50,000 to replace the septic system. We are now on the town septic, or the sewer.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's see, here's our new snow blower. And we hired quite a few local youths. But what we really need is, what we're having now is the building can't be saved. We've had, Matt Morse came out, Brian Kuhn and David Dennis, both from the CDC, came out and said there's no way that building can be saved. Because we wanted to do some work inside to rearrange things, and they said there's nothing you can do. You need a new building. We have frost heaves in the winter that are over 2.5 feet high. The walls are no longer attached to the foundation. What we're interested in doing is having a new building that looks something like this. This isn't exact, these are some prototypes. We will definitely make them custom for our site. The CDC has agreed to build the whole thing free of charge. Materials with electric costs are the $63,000. This is the size of the building. I'm not sure if you're interested in knowing that.
Are you keeping it on the same footprint, or are you enlarging?
Same footprint. It
We're
would-
thinking of doing an Alaskan slab, right?
Right, that's the name of the foundation, but it would be longer.
A totally new slab, but in the same
Slab.
place and a
No,
little,
it's not
Right, but it'll be bigger than what you've got now.
It'll be longer, yes.
Yep.
I think,
Yeah.
will it be wider also? A little bit wider?
But it will be longer so that you could have an extended, sort of like a porch
Right.
with maybe like, not a fire pit, but some type of fireplace where you could actually either have a bonfire or cook out, or a little of both.
oven type
The
thing.
entire slab would
Yeah.
be, the entire slab would be 80 feet by 36 feet.
Wow.
And 52 feet of that would be building,
Right.
and the rest of it would be a big porch.
And that is all gonna be frost wall attached, so it's a slab poured onto a foundation.
It'll be a
Yeah.
reinforced,
So it,
elastic.
just reinforced edge, or are we going down to frost
4
line?
feet.
Now,
Is it 4 feet? See, that's the confusion between, Alaskan is usually just a slab with a little bit extra on the edges.
Somewhere in here it says 4 foot, a new foundation Alaskan slab with 4-foot frost walls.
well, we have disagreement on
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so maybe it will and maybe it won't.
Okay. Fully insulated, new electric and plumbing, new licensed kitchen for snack bar and events, indoor game room, men's and women's bathrooms and changing rooms, large community and event room, and a new covered patio and outdoor fireplace area. Our, I think I'll go back, our partners, Town of North Bennington, Bennington Shaftesbury, Career Development Center, citizens of the local organizations, and Alyssa has started to contact the Department of Natural Resource. There's a matching grant, so if we can come up with 25,000, we can apply for a matching grant of 25,000.
But total expenses
So
is,
somewhere in the range of about 110,000 for a brand new building in that same location. What we are asking for support from you is, in the years past, you have given us operating support of 3,000. We would like that to continue, and we are asking for 2 years of a 5,000 per year capital improvement towards our capital budget. We would like to build this in the fall of 16.
16.
So we'll make it through
so you got
this
2 years to
summer.
raise the money and get through 2 summers yet.
2 summers, and then it'll come down.
Yeah, that was Alyssa and I had spoke about that. I thought that it might be easier for the communities and their support to spread this out a little bit
Yeah.
and for you to find a couple different things. One is you might be able to write 2 separate grants,
Right.
and have 2 years to raise the additional funds you need. So I think that's,
But having the CDC would be involved with partial design as well as building it. They would build the exterior so they could work in it all winter. and getting it ready for the spring, and the cost of $63,000 for all the materials, all the labor, all the electricity, that doesn't include plumbing, but this seems very, very reasonable. And it's not really a choice we have anymore. The building's gonna come
Yeah,
down,
for sure.
so what are we going to replace it with is what we're.
And even wanting to make it, as much year-round as possible. I mean, this is the first time ever that we've had this lovely snow blower in Sandy Sumner to just want to come and take care of it and make it beautiful ice skating for the community. This is hard, and we raise the money for it, and so just as more time goes by, I really feel like we become a little, we have our winter parties, now we're gonna have ice skating. It would be really lovely if we had a building that was insulated and did have a wood stove, and we could open up on weekends and offer hot chocolate and ice skating and have an inventory of reasonable rentals that we could lend out for skates. It would just add to our community as the lake has been doing. I would like to continue that in that direction, so this would all kind of complement that.
Well, I, for one, in the 10 years that this process, or probably about 10 years you guys have been really.
This is my 10th year this summer. Yeah,
It's just,
good math.
it is incredible what's happened there. And this is not to say that at different times in the history of the lake and it didn't have that kind of energy, but it is just amazing. Again, the usership and the memberships and the help we've had from the community and getting the sewer dealt with. I mean, the place is just incredible. And I'm not one to, I'm always amazed, I don't swim over there. I'm not like a swim, but I go over there and it's just like, my God, the activity that's happening and the community that's happening there, any of these events, the fireworks, the cabarets, it's really one of the greater recreational sites I think we have in the county, and like you said, a lot of people use it from Bennington, Shaftesbury, and further.
We have people from Cambridge, we have people from New York, if you look at our memberships, we have a fairly big staff. And, I just feel like let's just try to make our backyard a little brighter. Not everybody can afford an elaborate vacation. Just
Or
make
their
it-
own swimming pool.
How many little villages, how many towns have a lake? I mean, it's a treasure for us, so I'd like to enhance it.
Any other comments about this? I mean, this is a decision we'll make during budgeting process, of course. It's not a decision we make, actually. The money they're asking for will go on to the, it'll be voted on at the annual floor meeting, so. But I am in support of it, for sure. If we can find it in any way to find it in our budget, that we can swing it.
No, I think it's great.
Anything else on that? All right, well, thanks, guys. And again, this is the first step of what you have to do, and then you'll know by relatively early January whether it's something that we're gonna put on the ballot, per se. So, we'll let you know. Thank you. Do you want your photos back for other presentations and whatnot?
Thank you.
Great. Okay, it is 7:30. Is there anything else? Am I missing something?
We're gonna do the public
Yeah.
meeting before we approve any of we still haven't approved.
Oh, we got those.
We haven't really opened the meeting, approved the minutes, budgets, any of those things, but
Details here. I was just trying to get through this, we'll do the public meeting in 1 second. Let's get through the review and approval of the minutes of November 11.
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
See that? That was
That's pretty easy.
See?
Review the monthly warrant and approve the payment of bills.
Oh, you got a number of them.
Just, am I just missing the total?
Yes, I got you a whole package.
Okay, so we don't really have
Do you
the,
have something for us?
Did you bring, like, all the warrants, or do you want me to just have them sign the copies that I brought?
Oh, they usually sign one copy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I brought a bunch of
the other one,
Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
All right. So you've got You've got the big warrant here. That was the first page of this. There were
Yep.
3 tabs on that. That's the amount to approve. This is the November payroll.
Yep.
These are the 2 that I sent earlier in the month. The interest on this is actually a little bit less because it was paid off a little bit earlier, and I just had transposition on one of those. So those are the 4 that need signing, please.
Okay.
So what we have,
No,
this is kind of a new process for us with the,
Okay.
we have the warrant, which is what we would normally sign, and you all had that, but I guess what we were missing was the number.
Yeah, we don't, so actually, if you want to read that off,
So
we
the
can.
number is 68,375 and 33 cents.
68, one more time?
68,375.33. It's a bigger number because our annual insurance payment is in at $34,000. So I think that'd be the one you can look at and the one that you would sign.
So that is just basically a condensed
Yes.
version of all this
Yes,
without
and
all the
I've got
information,
you
right?
a whole package of all of that, plus a couple of new reports that we can talk about later.
Okay.
Or ask. Mary,
Yes.
we got a lot of materials, but did we get this particular warrant?
Yes.
Yes, you did. I
That
think
was
so.
the
It was in
first.
tabs, though.
There were
It was-
3 tabs on that one.
Okay.
One which was the warrant, one was the invoice detail, and one which was the GL detail.
So I missed that.
But I've got a whole other package
Gotcha.
for you.
All right, I missed that then.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't get it.
And the invoice detail will add up to it on this one.
Yep.
There was a mistake on the first one.
Did you sign it? Okay. Next is the payroll warrant.
I don't think we made a motion to approve
I
that
don't
yet.
think we,
Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move we approve the warrant.
I'll second that.
I need a personal life coach. You're gonna
I'll
stick
tell you, yeah, I'll just stay right here.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There you go. Now we're
And
done.
I'll move we approve the payroll warrant for November.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye. And now we've also got to do these things, right?
Just to make sure, yeah. And then, we have the tax collector report. Again, this is kind of new to us, but I guess it's something we should go ahead and approve and sign, right?
Yes, because those were the checks that were, the top part of it were overpayments made by some of the taxpayers.
Okay, so it's a
those-
change in the-
Those amounts were refunded.
Okay.
And then the bottom part is the amount of the education taxes collected that have been remitted to either Mount Anthony or
North Bennington graded.
Graded School.
Why the two separate North Bennington graded checks?
Because the one is the local option.
Oh, right.
That local option
Okay.
tax, that small amount.
All right.
And historically, that was put on a separate check just to delineate it.
Entertain a motion to accept.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And then finally, the electronic transfer to satisfy the tax anticipation loans. In other words, the loans have been paid back with tax receipts. And that was a total of $116,353.03. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I will assume that everybody's here for the Mechanic Street discussion. If not, is there somebody who's got something else going? Something else you want to talk about? because I would probably take them first just to get it on. So let's, I'll need a motion to open the public meeting on the Mechanic Street Sidewalk project.
I'll make that motion.
All those in favor? Aye. So I believe we'll turn this over to
I
Jim.
can
to
start?
Yeah.
Sure. Hi, my name is Jim Sullivan. I work with the Bennington County Regional Commission, and I'm working for the village as a local project manager, kind of doing some coordination work on this project. And this project involves a so-called scoping study. It's kind of a preliminary assessment of potential sidewalk along Mechanic Street. The village applied for a grant last year and received some funding to do this study. The purpose of the study basically is to look at various alternatives, where a sidewalk might go, which side of the road, how far back from the side of the street, what the potential environmental impacts are, what the cost is, any historic or cultural impacts. Kind of put all those things together and to try to come up with a preferred alternative that people accept. And that might be anywhere from not doing anything at all, which is always one of the alternatives to look at, to a very specific, alignment and type of construction. So we're at the very beginning of the process now. The funding that's been obtained just pays for this preliminary study. There's no construction funding or anything like that that's been approved for this project. So this is just a planning study to look at the possibilities and to try to figure out which direction the village wants to go with this project, if at all. So as part of that, we hired a consulting engineer to guide us through the process. And Chrissy Haskins is here from the Dufresne Group, and she is the project manager for the Dufresne Group. So I just like to turn it over to Chrissy and let her kind of provide an overview of the project area and the steps from her perspective. Chrissy? Does anybody have any questions about the process before we start talking about specifics? Good.
It's not always the case. A little
There's
dialogue.
an extra, which Lori would probably like one. Is there one?
There is. Lori?
It always takes me a minute to figure out what direction to hold it.
All right, good evening. My name is Chrissy Haskins. I'm with Dufresne Group. Basically, a quick overview of the process that we're going to go through is this is the first of 3 public meetings. There'll be another one about mid-February to go over some of the alternatives that we come up with, and those alternatives are based off of your input here tonight. And then there'll be a third one at about mid-April to present the final report with all of the information that was collected and the alternative that was chosen. So the project area that we're going to be looking at is on Mechanic Street, starting at Prospect Street up to the cemetery. The possible alternatives and options that we have to look at are, as Jim said, there is a mandatory no-build alternative. We have to evaluate not doing anything, leaving it the way it is. And that is part of that's just a requirement of the funding. So some of the other options we can look at is which side of the street to put it on, put a sidewalk on. Would there be a grass strip? Would there be curbing? What kind of materials do we want to use? And these are all things that we'd be looking for your input on. Other things that come into play are possible drainage issues that a sidewalk would create, or that a sidewalk could fix. And these projects can go as far as to include lighting if necessary and other sort of safety and pedestrian improvements. Any questions so far? Okay. So what you have in front of you is an existing conditions-based map. This includes some of the information that we need to collect. You can see that there's some flood zone information, wetlands, streams, hazardous waste sites, none of which are in the project area, so that's good. We don't have to worry about any of those. If anybody was home yesterday afternoon, you might have seen some folks walking around. They were doing a historic and archaeological assessment. We should have the results of that in January, and that'll be, anything they find will be added to this. So at this point, there doesn't seem to be any environmental impact to putting in a sidewalk. Utility poles are things that we look at. Utility poles tend to be on the north side of the road here, I think for the most part. So we initially be looking probably at the south side of the road, and I think there's an existing pathway, let's call it, that people have been using, and it's been plowed, I believe, in the winter. And that is on the south side. That actually includes a little grass strip, and then there's a pathway. So initially, that seems like potentially the best place to put a sidewalk.
Could you trace out with your finger where a new sidewalks would be?
What we'd be looking at would be, so there's a little piece of sidewalk that comes in off of Prospect Street now. And that's actually on the north side. And then this corner, we haven't really gotten too much into it yet. But the pathway that currently exists is along the south side through here. I think it goes up to about in here somewhere.
All the way up Mechanic.
It goes all the way to Frederick.
Yes, I believe it starts right at that Frederick Street and then goes all the way down. And then it kind of, around this corner, it kind of disappears, I think.
I think the current sidewalk goes up to Frederick.
So it's Frederick.
So this study actually includes looking at Mechanic Street all the way up to the cemetery. So another option here is whether you'd want to see it go from Prospect to Frederick. Do you want to see it go to the cemetery? It doesn't have to go that far. So these are all options that we could talk about, that we could present as alternatives.
But just to understand, this is the scope, this is the window right here. So there's one, you can discuss truncating to some degree the project, but we can't possibly expand it. And I'm not saying we want to, I'm just.
I was just going to say, in the handout that came in the mailbox, the designated sidewalk was going to be all the way up to Madison Road. Although the wording said it was going to end in the cemetery, but the dotted line and all the way up to Madison, is that planned for a second half or something to that effect?
No, I think that flyer, the person who put it together was just kind of drawing a circle around Mechanic Street, basically. Yeah.
I didn't get that flyer. And I'm on half of Mechanic Street.
I think I can explain something about that. The person who put those in there is somebody who's helping out the BCRC, maybe a Vista or,
Yeah.
and I'm guilty of this myself. I've put things in people's mailboxes, which is something that you don't do.
Right.
What I'm saying is that once it was found out that that had happened, they were removed. And so I don't know then what alternative means was made. So it was probably put in your box and then it was taken out later that day. Not to say that you shouldn't have had another means of being notified. The paper probably was the other.
And just to clarify, mine wasn't in the mailbox, it was in the newspaper slot beneath.
Which I think's fair game, but the newspaper people don't like that either for some reason.
We'll try to do a better job with publicity in the future. I know that there were a number of flyers posted around the village, but not everybody might have run into one of those either. So we will try to get the word out properly in the future.
How did you end up hearing about it, Leon?
Just now.
Oh, you were just here for,
information only.
okay. But,
I'm just now hearing about this project right now, for the first time, and I don't have a Mechanic Street.
but it appears that the sidewalk as currently proposed would stop prior to your property line.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I'm still not sure where the proposed sidewalk will be and how many.
Well, at this point, we don't have a defined location for a proposed sidewalk. We're asking for input,
kinda what the
where you
discussion's
may or
about.
may not want to see one. We were just noting that there is an existing walkway on the south side of the road.
Yeah, really, the purpose of, one of the main purposes of getting together tonight, and thank you all for coming out, is to just hear from you folks about where you think a sidewalk ought to go, if there are any places you think a sidewalk definitely should not go, if there are issues that we need to be aware of, that we need to avoid or take advantage of, and we want to hear that from you folks.
I would encourage you to continue to think about the south side.
There's some drains that come that you just, to be aware of. I'm sure the town guys, there's some drains that come from yards that the street.
There's a little problem with that, Meg, in that actually those drains are not currently legal. I believe you have one, I think there's some others, there's some pump systems that,
No, ours not, ours comes off of the top of the hill.
oh, it does, it's not a sump, okay.
There's drainage coming from the hill across the road.
Right, no, we're aware of that. In fact, as you notice, we did quite a bit in front of your house this last spring season where there was a collapsed pipe and we tried to, and there's more work that's gonna be done there, and obviously any work that, it's a complicated problem because that whole College hillside is very wet, and everybody who has a basement over there knows how wet it is. And that ultimately ends up draining either under the road, on top of the road, it's heading for the river, and the wetland that's down there.
And the street drains are very deep.
Yep.
So.
Those will all, I believe, if we were to do anything with a project like this, that would all be integrated appropriately into the sidewalk project. The other thing is, ideally, I think if we were to do it, we would have a curb and gutter situation with the proper drop inlets that gets the water where it needs to go as rapidly as it can. That adds another significant cost to the project of a sidewalk. I believe our road foreman is definitely in favor of curbs for many reasons. I think the nice thing about a curb is that if you have a green space between the road and the sidewalk, it stays green instead of getting parked on and driven on. But that's what this is all about, is people making those observations, recommendations. I think we also want to know what level of support, acceptance, or lack of acceptance there is to the idea, because I've heard a mixture of people's opinions. So,
If you do it on the south side, isn't that going to control the water that's already coming off the yards and just pull it in people's front yards?
again, I think that design has a lot to do with that, such that if you have obviously if you had an elevated sidewalk that created a perch situation on the yard side, I don't think that'd be acceptable. So I think that it will be, the elevations and all that would have to be worked in a way, as it does in any other yard anywhere, the water has to keep moving. But again, that's the detail that we'll get once you get into a construction phase and start looking at those issues.
It would just seem to me, and Tom, I just, just thinking everybody on our side of the street has to deal with the water issue. And if we're building something that's just gonna dam it all on our front yards, which would make more sense to put it on the north side. And then all still down the road where it's always been. We've already got a huge issue with water.
But I don't know that there was a sidewalk there. people who've lived there long enough have told me that it was actually a legitimate sidewalk. It was a macadam kind of, so if you go in there and scrape around, you wouldn't want to plant a hedge there because it's really, there is asphalt kind of underneath all that. So there was one always there. That's one of the reasons I think that the focus has kind of just gone to that side. And it also, I think, adds credence to the notion that it doesn't necessarily have to stop the water. If it had to be something that was built up more, if it was decided to be something out of concrete, which I don't think would be the case, but again, that's still open for discussion, there are ways, of course, to allow water to go underneath those systems too, pipes.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've heard about over the past year is just, in summary, a huge amount of runoff coming down from the college, so anything that happened couldn't impinge the water, and if anything, should help to facilitate it leaving the area.
And as far as financing this, because this all started because Norm came to me, and he was more concerned about the drainage and the water problem initially than the sidewalk. And we were saying, let's look at the whole thing. If we're going to do it, let's do it. We really want it to be in the long run. And as far as financing it, the water issue is probably better financed through a grant with the, what's called the Better Back Roads Grant, which is aimed strictly at water problems. And again, making sure the water is going to the right places. And that grant is a grant that's fairly quick turnaround. And typically, they let you use a lot of in-kind money, so any work Norm did or anything would be counted towards the match, and it's only a 20% match. So typically, it's zero expense to the village to make that happen. So, I mean, that's going to be a very important part of the study, making sure that we got the drainage solved before we even think about a sidewalk. And then the sidewalk, and the sidewalk grants are, there's only a 10% match for those. So this is a project that is not going to cost the village a lot of money if we go forward with it. But again, it's what the people that live there want. And I think the water issue is something that nobody's against.
Chrissy is a good engineer, and so she's probably not going to design a sidewalk that's going to pond water and get water under the sidewalk that's going to wind up breaking up her sidewalk.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that would have to be ultimately part of the design.
Right.
Actually, one of those back road grants is what we used to solve the issue down around the corner on North Street a number of years ago now, where, and this had to do again with water coming right out of the ground, and North Street would end up, water would come up, it would freeze, and the fellow that lived in the trailer there on the corner had this much ice in his driveway. And so from that point, we put a pipe in to take that water underground to the river. And that's essentially what we were doing, is enhancing the ability for that to happen at the intersection kind of North and Mechanic in front of your house. And the work, a little bit of work that was done higher up. That's the point. I think we'd want to add this kind of grant to this kind of grant, make sure it's all done right. And I can actually also ask, there are issues that, the issue that we dealt with further up there this summer was, years ago, a trench was dug between a property line to help channel that water away from people's houses, but it was on private property. It was just done, and then it brought the water down to the, I asked the people who live there to also look at their terrain, look at ways they can assist at getting the water off their property to an appropriate place. That's stuff we can't do. We can't go into your backyard and help you do that, but you can help guide water around a house. You can do, various things, and you should be in contact with us about that if this is something we're gonna do. It might be an opportunity, again, if we're gonna put a new drop inlet in somewhere there to catch water, well, you might wanna try to get some of your water issues heading towards that drop inlet type of thing. Again, this isn't happening next year, right? We don't even know that it's happening at all yet, so it's gonna be a couple of years down the road. But I think those are all really good ideas. Is there anybody in the room that's just opposed to the sidewalk on the south side? Again, conditionally, yes. if it doesn't solve your water problem.
I just don't even know what it would look, I'm trying to learn about all that. I mean, other things are on-street parking, we have no parking to begin with, you try to lose on-street parking would be a huge issue.
There's one, isn't there like one place there where, maybe everybody uses on-street parking occasionally, but isn't there one house where it's like kind of part of the property where there's always cars parked right where
It's
the...
next to my house. 4 cars in the front.
Maybe you could share where the parking space.
Oh, and we share my driveway.
Yeah.
I mean, just an observation from my perspective as a local resident too. Cars drive up and down that road pretty fast, right? And I mean, so my way of thinking, some on-street parking is maybe not a bad thing. It would slow cars down a little bit. So if you had a curb out there and cars parked next to it or not a curb, I mean, it would narrow things down, it would slow things down a little bit. I mean, it's kind of frightening when you hear them coming up over the hill and bearing down on you, so.
So putting in the sidewalk wouldn't eliminate
That's what I was
on-street
asking, right?
parking. I mean,
It might require, if one wants to consider that specifically as part of, it might require that the sidewalk, existing footprint of where the old sidewalk is, would have to move a little further into one's yard. I was wondering if those surveys have been done and if we know how far from center line.
Not yet.
Okay, so we'll be determining where the right-of-ways are. If it would turn out that in order to accommodate that kind of thing, it would be necessary to look into easements. That adds a whole other dimension to projects like this, where the landowner is asked to give up slivers of their land so that the sidewalk can move inches in or feet in or whatever. Again, that's all up to possible debate, but I agree. A curb and effectively narrowing the road would slow cars
Well,
down.
I'm all for slowing down traffic on the street, but at the same time, we can't, we just don't have any other parking options.
Right.
Right.
The foot traffic has increased immensely in the last years, so it seems like it's very prudent to put a sidewalk in on Mechanic Street, because college kids walk from the college road down, and every day you see quite a few people using that area, and I think that would be a big asset for somebody that could.
And
Children walking to school.
It's a walking village for school.
Kids now that walk in, they like it, I see little ones all the time. Yeah.
How wide does the sidewalk have to be by code?
It has to be 4 feet minimum. V-Trans has a requirement of 5 feet, except for very specific circumstances.
I don't think that Norm will allow a build of any sidewalk in the village narrower than 5 feet.
So you get in a path.
It's not a path. And the reason is it accommodates our sidewalk machines and,
Allows them to be plowed in the wintertime without,
Yeah.
otherwise people would have to hand shovel them, so.
and I'd just like to say, consider ourselves lucky.
It is right now, it's certainly not 4 feet.
What's that?
This machine's been doing it right now, it's not 4 feet.
But if we put in a sidewalk and he does it, it'll tear, if you put in one less than 5 feet, it'll tear
Tear
up
your
the
lawn.
yards on both sides of the sidewalk. Now it's plowing over dirt, yeah, it's plowing over dirt and everything else anyway, so to put one in, and, because it happens used to happen in front of our house, the next house down, because of where the utility pole is, so you'd have to go around the
Have to go
pole,
around it.
and every year we would go back in and fill it in,
And that's the other issue with putting sidewalks where there are utility poles, is that it's just a whole other headache of either do you pour the sidewalk around the pole or do you move the sidewalk all the way into the inside of the poles, which then automatically creates situations for right of way.
Or you move the poles, which gets into.
Oh my God, don't even go.
And the potential too is that if we don't end up putting in a sidewalk, the plowing may go away because of the surface that we're trying to plow there isn't really a plowable surface anyway.
I think that certainly it's the opinion of Norm that he would probably not want us plow that anymore if it wasn't a sidewalk. It doesn't create a very safe surface, even when you plow it. In fact, it can probably in some ways make it a little more slippery than if you're trekking through snow there. And it's a dangerous enough of a road that, like with your children and stuff, if you don't have a sidewalk, then how do you get down the street except in the street?
Yeah.
And that's probably not so safe, but,
And there is a period in the year when, yeah, you don't have the kids walking on it.
right. And there's times where it's so muddy that it's not doing your lawn probably any good when you see what it looks like after.
Would this go all the way to Pleasant Street or not Pleasant Street, but up the hill to, yeah, no, all the way to Pleasant, going up the hill? Disoriented here. No, would it go all the way to Prospect?
Prospect.
Yes.
Stop?
Yeah,
Prospect.
Okay, because there is a sidewalk
On the other
on
side.
the north
Yeah.
side,
Right.
which you could make a crosswalk to.
And I think that's probably what would happen, but again, that's also up for where it would likely, right at that corner where you've got good visibility from both sides of Prospect and from Mechanic, it would be a decent place to put a crosswalk and then start the sidewalk in front
Further
of,
up, right.
just down.
Yeah, there could be a crosswalk somewhere in this area here,
Right.
where there's good sight distance from this curve and coming this way and from the intersection, to cross over to the north side.
To the south side from the north, yeah. Or it may turn out that it just makes sense, it would be affecting one or two properties. It may make sense to continue that same sidewalk right down to the south corner of Prospect. And then there's crosswalk to go down onto actually either side of Prospect Street at that point, so. Any other insights,
When
inputs?
you're looking at this and doing your surveying work, will you be trying to establish property lines?
At this point, we'll establish right away. So we won't be establishing the sides of your property, but we'll be looking at the right of way of the road and where the front of your
I'm
property is.
just curious as to, my deed says I own to the south side of Mechanic Street, and I'm wondering where the heck that is. It won't make any difference to your property.
Typically, right-of-ways are 3 rods. We have a surveyor that'll be coming in to do some research, and he'll figure out, sometimes they're 2, sometimes they're more. I would be surprised if it was any more than 3 on this road.
No, it won't be. An old deed like that, once a town accepts a road, I suspect you officially, no matter where that line is, it's the center road. The center of the road.
I know, there's no practical difference.
Right.
I'm just
Right.
Yeah.
wondering where.
And then you go 3 rods towards your house, and that's the right of way. You still own it.
About 25 feet off the center of the road. That's a 3-rod right-of-way, 25 feet off the center of the road, approximately.
Establishing the center is the trick.
Well, and that thing, over the last 150 years, that road's center has certainly changed. We ran into that down on Scary Lane rather significantly.
Right.
So what may happen there is, if it was laid out, sometimes they're actually laid out, in which case the right-of-way, as it was laid out in the records, may not actually be centered on the road where it is now. So in that case, we might have more right-of-way on one side than the other. If it wasn't actually laid out, then it's very likely going to be based on the center of the existing, the way it currently sits.
I just
That'll
came,
be for the surveyor to figure out.
I was looking for some maps the other day, and somebody has just recently deposited in this room road maps from 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and they're all state transportation maps, so I don't know if the individual might have a need for that.
Possibly.
We have them.
So Chrissy, where do we go from here? When can people expect to hear from us again?
So at this point, we'll be gathering some information, we'll be putting together some alternatives, and in about mid-February, we'll have another meeting. There'll be a 2-week, 15-day notice. So you'll get some advance notice like you did this time, and hopefully we'll get everybody this time. And we'll have another meeting just like this, and we'll have some more detailed maps, showing some different alternatives. And at this point, at the end of this phase of the project, when we get to the end of April, we're gonna have a report with some maps and it shows in our preferred alternative that will be developed out of all of these meetings that we have, and then the trustees will endorse it. From there, we'd actually then, if it was to move forward, if it was no build, then that's the end of it. But if there was a decision to move forward with the sidewalk, from there would be, the village would apply for potentially another grant to go into final design and construction. So our project is expected to be completed in late April. With the grant process, with the V-Trans, we wouldn't start final design until probably next December or January, and that is typically a 2-year process. Just to give you an idea of how long it does actually take.
If people have thoughts about this while you're putting together your preferred design, is there a way they can get those, convey those to you too, or?
Sure, I mean, it might be easiest to get them to me at the Bennington County Regional Commission, so people could call me at 442-0713, that's Jim Sullivan, or you could email me at the Regional Commission too. It's jsullivan@bcrcvt.org.
We would love any additional input you have.
Are we good? I'll entertain a motion to close the public.
Also move.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for coming. You know, it's quite often that we have these public meetings about something and nobody shows up.
And we're in the public.
Maybe I could just make an announcement?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Just a minute, we got one announcement that might be,
I want to remind people that the village is in the process of doing a charter review. We voted on this at our previous annual meeting. We're coming, hopefully, to the end of that process, and there'll be some public hearings connected with that. So just keep a lookout for that. It looks like there may be one in January and then early in February. So we're hoping to have people come and provide some input.
we'll be
Reaction, yeah.
anticipating a vote, an Australian vote, ballot vote on these proposed changes to the village charter in March at the polls. It's mostly just bringing things up, modernizing this document that started in the 1700s, and but there might be some things in it that are pertinent, and there'll be versions of it available and
Right.
posted that you
But
can.
I think because it needs to be done by Australian ballot, it would, my recommendation is that we do it when we're voting, coming to the polls to vote for other townwide issues rather than, we
special election.
can't do it at the regular annual meeting, at the floor meeting. It will have to be an Australia ballot. So I think we're going to piggyback on that rather than scheduling a special election to do it. So I just want people to be cognizant of that and be on the
Give us your
lookout for
input.
information. Yep.
Thanks.
Construction going.
Oh, it's keeping me busy, that's for sure.
Are you making the progress you thought you should?
We're right on schedule and finding out good stuff, so, yeah.
When's your turbines coming?
June. They'll be done.
Good luck. Always love them.
Good to see you.
Sure, I'll throw it in our map room.
It's good wallpaper.
It
Thank
is.
you.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Where are we?
Treasurer's report, I guess. Oh,
I think we weren't done, I don't think we were done with citizen comments, I think that was the
And are
next.
there any other citizen comments?
Here we go. Here's a
Hi, Matt.
citizen.
no, I think he's
He's gonna wait.
do that. at the end of the,
I've just gotta find my, there we go. I guess we're treasurer's report next. Yes. Take it away, Mary.
All right, several shrubs died for this, so
Yeah.
take one and pass it along. Now, in here, I'm gonna go through this a little bit slowly. I've got another copy for you. The first stapled section in that is what I sent earlier, which is the warrant. This is, again, another copy of the warrant for you to have. It's the total that you approved. The second couple of pages of this first section is, again, what you had, but I just printed it out in case somebody couldn't get it printed right. And this is the individual invoice detail that goes along with that, so you can go in and take a look at the individual invoices. And hopefully someone is taking them all. They are in the book, and, you know, you can look at the invoices, and maybe at some point we will get to where trustees actually do approve them. The third section, the last couple of pages is a landscape printing, and that is where you see that same transaction detail, but this is broken out by account. So if you wanted to go and see, well, what hit in, you know, in the electric account, or what hit in a specific maintenance, you can see what's in here. This also then matches to all the expenses that are on the actual versus budget spreadsheet, which we'll get to in just a sec, under the actual column, and that's in the appropriate month. Most of it is in the month of November, but some is in December. So this is for you, just for your review. Obviously, when you're approving a warrant, you can't really be expected to know all the detail of what you're doing, so you have this now for your edification for the future. I do, and I will get that to you in just a second. Okay, now, presuming that you don't have any questions on that warrant section, let's move to the second one, which is what Janice had a few questions on earlier. And this is your, basically a budget by month and where we are for roughly the first 6 months. We
Right,
did
and
ask.
and so the figures under budget are a 6-month figure,
That is,
right?
yes,
Okay.
that is July to December budget.
Right,
The
okay.
actual is, for the most part, July to November. There's a few December in there though as well. Just a few. So this is, I think, something that, again, I think there are some questions that we can look at here, and if you have any questions, work in process, so we can probably reclassify some things. For an example, if you look under the fire department new equipment, it looks like maybe it's over budget there, but remember, if you go to the spreadsheet that I sent you and you look at the budget tab, a lot of this budget, I didn't have a clue how it was supposed to be spread by month, so most of it's spread just evenly across a month, except for those things that were, you know, kind of common sense, that you'd be doing your salt in the winter months and not the summer months. But that's something I think we can look at and see this. I think the interesting thing to me is on the last page of this, where if you take out some of the one-time things and the otherwise funded expenses, such as the fountain, which is fully paid for by donations, the grants, the firehouse reserve, there is all of those funds were transferred out of the reserve accounts. So if you take all of that out, it's only 4% off of the budget. So, you know, not really, I think Matt said, not really a huge concern at this point.
Especially with all the front-loaded expenses that we have.
Right, exactly. So there are some things in there to kind of keep in mind. Another thing, please do look at it, and please ask any questions whatsoever. Now, the next one is a new one. Yippee. This, I think.
So Mary, I do have a question on
Yes.
this. So, when you say it's July to December, are you figuring in 5 months or 6 months?
6 months.
So we
Well,
still have a number
actually-
of December
actually,
expenses
it's
to come.
July, August, September, October, November, yeah, 6 months. you're right. There are a number of expenses that are not hitting in December. We signed the checks tonight for December, but the actual
Right.
expenses, the utilities, et cetera, are not in here. There are a very few, but not all.
Right,
One good
So to
example would
your
be the
point-
salt, where there's an outstanding
right.
of 1,400.
Or just the maintenance bills that Norm was talking about
Right.
in terms of
Well,
highway.
those haven't even happened yet.
Yeah, but they probably will in December.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
hope so.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
now, we can then start to kind of understand when these bills are hitting and build the next budget so that we can calendarize that budget a little bit better by knowing where historically those expenses have hit. So this may or may not, hopefully next year this will be a little more maybe accurate or reasonable to history than what we know right now.
So would it make more sense that, I think I'll ask you, so going along with the question, would it make more sense to get this the first week of January then, because then we would have, or at the January meeting, because then we would
I've
have
been
all of
trying,
December?
Well, we've been getting them each
So
month.
it's gonna be a month.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah,
I did
yeah.
send it the last couple of
Right,
months.
you did.
And we'll get one in January presumably
Yes.
that will be
Yeah.
more reflective. This is just helping us
And
see.
that'll be a more accurate reading of 6 months, even though this has 6 months on it, that'll be a better idea of 6 months.
Right, but I mean, the percentage, well, I look at the percentages.
Right.
And so it's not, we're not 50% through the budget year.
No, we're not.
Where,
Right, but we should be actually more than 50% through our actual expenses because so many are front-loaded. The
Well,
library,
some.
all those things that we just write a check in the first month, that they don't actually appear even
Well,
throughout the year.
And so many of those
well,
things,
most of the.
there is no budget remaining.
Right.
Because it was, and that's how we set up that budget section of this, so that we put those things in there.
We pay about half the organizations,
Early
I mean,
half it, yeah.
but many of them we haven't.
I have a couple
too,
of other
yeah.
concerns about the
Yeah.
cash flow too, that
Yeah.
I'll get to in just
Okay.
a
Okay.
second. But kind of along the same lines that you're talking about right there. I don't want to go too fast, but I don't want to belabor any of this either. So, the next one, which I think you'll find of interest, is the statement of activity. This is the first time that I've gotten one for you where it actually shows the revenue. Now, there is no budget comparison here because, again, I don't have a budget done in this or any budget information from last year in this detail. We will next year, and my hope is that this then will become the document that I can give you every month showing what's the actual, and we'll actually have the budget in this detail so that we can do this. But in here, you'll see that, for instance, and I've got copies of this for Norm too, there's a sale of equipment. It's account number 4400, sale of equipment, $9,900. That's where all the money went, where Norm sold his equipment. So that 6,000 or whatever that he spent, 6 or 9, I can't even remember, that he spent, well, it's covered here. But you don't net your expenses and your income and your revenue on the same, in the same line. Now, David, the fountain at Lincoln Park, well, there's certainly way more revenue to cover expenses than this, but that was in last year, and I don't really have other balances from last year in here yet. So this is really just what's happened this year.
Yeah, and a lot of
There are, and David, I have 2 questions for you, if I could. I've got some, 2 state funds came in, and I'm really not sure, I really can't tell what grants they're for. I know they're for grants, but I can't tell what they're for. So I'm gonna show you the amounts and you can help me identify.
The one who would have the best information on that would be Jim Sullivan.
Jim, okay, I can ask
He's
him.
the one that makes out all these
Okay.
invoices.
Yeah, I mean, you just get a number.
I
and
wish
you
the
don't get-
state would tell us what the heck they're giving us money.
No,
They
they
don't
give you
code it,
a
they
reference
don't do
number,
it,
but it
yeah.
doesn't tie to anything.
Send you a blank check.
Might as well.
Figure out what it's
Yeah.
for.
So again, now, I am gonna send this to you tonight. I just didn't get a chance to before this because we had other things going on. But I also have a report which is very similar to the one that's the third part of your warrant that shows on the landscape page that shows all the detail. I've got one of these that's year to date, that's gonna tie out to every number on this statement of activity in terms of the expense, the expenditures. So I'm gonna email that to you. It was 18 pages long, and I just didn't print it all out. So, but at least you can look in there and start to see, well, what are the individual things that we're spending money for? I don't think that we really had that way of knowing what those things were. And you can also look in there, I'm quite sure you'll find something that need to be reclassified, and it might be in the wrong spot. So, do take a look at those, and you'll go in there. The last one that I have tonight is the account balances. Just a quick snapshot. This is through today. I don't have all of the November bank statements yet, but this is, as of today, what cash is in the bank. This is for our cash flow, and what the balance of all the restricted funds accounts are. Here's was my concern. Well, not a concern, but just something that I wanted to let you guys know. Roughly $270,000 is in the cash balance right now. That's what gets us through until taxes are collected next year. So if you look at where we are year to date through the 5+ months, probably gonna have to be borrowing some money again next year. A little bit hard to tell at this point because I just don't know enough about what will come up again in spring. True, there's a lot of the one-time things like the library and all of that that won't happen. Well, actually, that will happen again before this is. And you have all those reserve accounts that were voted on.
Yeah.
That's $50,000 that's
Yeah.
gotta come out of here too. So I think we still have to keep an eye on that cash flow. It's still probably gonna be a little tight.
Well, again, I think that's something we would anticipate.
Yeah.
We would anticipate needing an anticipation
Yeah.
note, given
Yeah.
I
the
think
last
most
few
years
of-
we have,
of what-
it's, you know,
There were some years there where we didn't. We made it through,
yeah,
but,
yeah.
and we'd like to work back towards that direction.
Right. Well, and again, we're also coming on the heels of the project down here too.
Exactly.
So, and that's not gonna happen immediately.
And there are expenses, excuse me, that we paid for that we might not have grant money for, you know, that one that, what was it, that new Bank Street thing? That new Bank Street project, there was some, probably $20,000 in there.
You mean out by the tracks?
Yes,
Yeah.
and some was, some other municipalities shared some of that cost.
Right.
But my understanding is that that's a grant, and that at some point that money should, at least to some degree, should be.
Show up.
Should be covered.
Yeah.
I said that was it, but it's not.
Okay.
I wanted to just do one more thing. Just tell you a quick update of where we are with the taxes collected. As of this morning, there were $166,000 in outstanding taxes, all tax years, including delinquent from this year. And the ones that I know are coming in soon, that people have called with or are currently paying on a plan, and other things that are possible. There's about $110,000 that I haven't really identified as a payment plan right yet, but not, you know, not an unreasonable amount to deal with. Again, most of this is schools, but some of this will remain in the village if it all gets collected. So, a couple of properties that I'd like to talk to you about after January, possibly looking at a tax sale from people that just simply do not respond. But most people are very, very responsive and very responsible, and it's been really a pleasure dealing with the people getting this stuff done.
Great.
So, that's
Mary,
that.
thanks so much. It's,
Yeah, thank you.
we're gonna get more and more used to being able to digest this on a monthly basis.
Well, yeah, and after we get a year under us, this planning is gonna make our budgetary process really, really easy once we have some history.
Looking forward to it.
Just one quick question. Have we paid all of our insurance for this year?
As far as I know, now that's it, oh,
In this
actually,
budget?
I'm glad you mentioned
Yeah.
that, because
That was a
that
$34,000
was a
check this month.
34,000. Now, that again is part of the reason why we look like we're over the budget. I don't know,
I have to bill the water department.
Yeah, so
for
the
their
water
portion.
department.
We're still waiting for that?
too,
Yeah,
so.
okay.
Just be an opportunity for you to speak to that issue.
Do we want to wait till we get to water? Yeah, that's fine. I actually met with Steve about the insurance. They're interested in shopping for their own insurance for that Mechanic Street property. So I told him I'd bring it up tonight. I don't see any reason why it would matter.
I don't think they can. I think they have to.
That's what I said. I said, the only thing I didn't know was, are you obligated to carry the same insurance, or are we obligated to carry the insurance on that building? I don't know how that works. But they were just interested because they wanted, I don't know if they think they can get a better deal, or they were just interested in eliminating, trying to go through. I
I
don't
think
know.
the concern is that, and I could be wrong, but I think part of the concern is that they just don't, they want to make sure that their property is insured at the proper, correct value.
Sure.
And that they didn't see the valuation. So I think it's really more a matter of communication and understanding than.
Yeah, no one, they're not feeling like they were a part of it.
Exactly.
They're not feeling the love. So, the point is, you can't take a similar building and have a different cover, or no coverage on one half or another. You're saying they want to do the due diligence to make sure that they're getting the coverage that
They need to make sure that all the properties are insured at the correct value.
Yes, sure.
Obviously, should anything happen.
Yeah.
You don't want to have a claim and then it's like, oh.
Is
you're
that
not covered for
more a need to involve them in the whole process when we're looking for
that. I
insurance?
think it probably would be a
Probably.
prudent thing to do.
Yeah.
After all, they're the experts on their own property.
Yeah. So should we talk to Steve about that?
Well, but again, because they pay the village the bill, it's village, it's a village coverage policy.
Yeah. Right.
It's really not it's not even, technically, it's not their job to seek.
Right, no, I just think it behooves the village too to get Steve involved in the process and make sure that the amounts are actually right, and I can't.
There are meetings, we have meetings every month. Yeah.
Well, in the same way that we do the fire department, for instance, too.
Yeah.
Because they have special insurance needs as well.
Probably be an easy thing at the next renewal, just everybody sit down and discuss it with the agents.
So is there a reason why they couldn't shop for their own if they,
There is a
Insist.
reason, there's
Okay.
lots of reasons.
are there reasons?
Yeah,
Like-
yeah. I mean, you can't, there's certain umbrellas that they have to be under, they're not a municipality. They're not.
So would it be that they would have to, is it because it's on municipal property that,
Mostly, yeah.
okay, so
There's a
there,
lot of reasons similar to that.
There might be,
Because when I go back to
there
my
might be
one,
a
I
way
just wanna
that it
tell
can be worked out, but Laura's correct, absolutely correct. Again, it's a village, it's a village entity of which there's all these liability umbrellas and all this
Yep.
stuff. Now, if they're just talking about, fire insurance on the,
Well, there's some other thing, I don't know what they're talking about.
let's just- it's not even
really,
worth-
But there are workers'
Right.
comp issues, there's a $12,000
Oh, we know
bill
it.
in that,
yep.
which half of it belongs to their employees.
Mhm.
So there's, it's pretty,
I don't
pretty
think, yeah, but I don't
involved.
think they're not interested in anything other than that building. So the workman's comp insurance part of there, I think that would, I don't think they're looking to individually shop that out. I think they were more interested in just the insuring the property. So not to have their own insurance policy for everything.
Well,
Again, this is
That
why
might be more
I said I'd bring it up tonight,
Yeah.
because I don't know how it's all broken up, I don't know how it all fits together, and I don't know how it's written that they're supposed to be insured.
Here's the bottom line. They're welcome to look into anything that they want to do, this is my opinion. And it may work out just fine. Currently, they are under this policy in all respects, and they need to pay their portion of it.
Yeah.
Should in the future, we're able to work something else out, that's fine, but,
And I have not billed them.
and so they've not been
Just
billed
got
for it
billed,
yet.
so.
Are you gonna circle back
Now that
around,
we've
Steve?
changed.
Oh, yeah, no, I've got to get a hold of him for some other things too, so.
Okay.
What was maddening is Norm was trying to keep these things up to date, but Will's totally ignored it. They never changed the figures, so every time he'd go and give them all the new information, and then the policy comes back with all the old information. This is the first time with the league that they're interested in getting the right value on things.
Right.
And I think Steve should, the water department should be part of that process.
Yeah.
They should know better the valuation of their equipment and everything. than we
Inventory and
should.
everything.
Yeah.
Oh, the inventory, and they should be part of that process.
Yeah.
Before, it really didn't matter because they just kept the figures from 10 years ago and said it didn't matter what the real figures were, which I find a little hard to believe, but.
All right, so when I go back to him. When is the, do we know what the anniversary date of this is? When does this,
April, May.
I was gonna say we're right around.
When is what?
So when is this policy, when do we have to renew the policy? When are we renewing the policy?
Next December.
No,
It's just been
that's
renewed.
not true.
I thought it was,
Yeah, we did.
Wasn't this the 6 month though?
Yeah,
This
six-
was the
This
6
was
month.
only
policy.
6 months.
No, I probably
Yeah.
It's a
have.
6 month.
6 month and then a
This
year
policy's
cycle.
a lot more than our old policy. Yeah, it is, cost-wise,
Yeah.
a lot, yeah. Because we're gonna be over budget on this. Let's see, this policy period, January 15 to January 16, but we only paid half of it tonight.
right.
Okay, so the next time that we are,
Let's see, July 1
July one makes sense.
okay.
is when we'll pay the
The
other
next
half.
portion.
No,
But-
they're
but the
on
policy
a
runs
calendar
from-
year, but they allowing us to
Year.
pay 50% of.
Not when we're paying, so when so this policy just.
Policy goes through the end of December.
It's January 1st
Right,
through
Which is, okay.
December 30th.
Right.
And you
And we
asked
pay-
when
we
we
pay
pay the
50.
other half, and I said.
Oh, no, I'm
July
sorry,
1st.
I was saying, when do we?
Renewal.
Renew the policy.
Oh, okay.
It'll be next December.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what term you signed up for.
So we've got a year to
Will's-
talk about this anyway. With him.
They should figure out what they can and can't do and bring a proposal to us.
We used to sign up for 3 years with Wills, that was our contract.
Right.
Norm took care of this. He didn't include most of us, so I really don't know whether we signed up for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. Many insurance companies ask that you have a contract
It's
for a
one,
certain
it's
amount.
one, it's
1
one
year.
year. It may change.
And we did have a presentation with the.
They came and gave us a
yeah,
full thing on it.
yeah.
so. Yeah, we have
So
some
we're
time.
We did
just
have
at the
a
beginning.
presentation, but all entities in the village were not
That's
asked
true.
about
That's true.
what their facilities cost, including the water department. That's where the issue has,
Yeah.
that's the issue, not just water, fire, et cetera. So it was not all inclusive, and I think that's where the trouble, that's
Yeah.
what the issues
Right.
are now, I believe.
Right.
Good analysis.
All right, so I will touch base with Steve and just let him know that.
And I'm sure
He's with us for a year.
at VLTC that they can talk to that
Yeah.
can help.
And it isn't even that we can't start to include, I think, if the water department needs to change their values, we can probably do that
Yes.
midterm and just make an adjustment. So I think it's something we can, if Steve needs to see some changes on that regard, we can probably get the wheels in motion for that, at least start to get it ironed out.
Sure. Well, and I think part of it too is if they've seen a significant increase on the cost of their insurance, they have a right to question it. And if you're saying, which we
And
are,
I'll
it
send them
is.
copies of the bill when I bill them so that they can see what. they
I was led to
bill.
believe that the cost difference was, it gets a little tough because that 34,000 includes a lot of their bill, but it's only half a year. Do you recall what our last year with our previous carrier, what the total annual rate
The total was 33 for the year.
for the village?
No, that included, the water department. No, the water department was billed separately.
That's right. And now I'm looking at
Through
what,
bills.
so that was 33, and now this one was 34, being half of what
Right.
half is.
But
right.
their workers' comp is about half of, the same as ours.
But other things aren't.
The other things are significantly less.
Yeah.
the total that was budgeted for insurance for the entire year was 22.5. That's because we
That was it.
bill, yeah, because it was only, it was
Right.
about
For
33.
this, for the village.
Right, the village piece was 22.5
Okay.
of all the insurance.
Right, but we had health insurance billed in a separate line item.
Yes.
And now it's
Okay,
not.
now it's not, but then we
Correct.
should break,
So-
then I should break that out.
Let's get that all
Because
broken
that's
out and
been
see where we're
changed.
at. I
Okay.
think we were
Right.
aware that we were
Okay.
getting something that wasn't
Okay.
apples to apples.
All
We
right.
were getting some
Right.
other things
All
that,
right, right.
and we chose
Yeah,
after the
some
presentation to
other
do
training
it,
and
so.
stuff like that.
Right.
It was-
Grant accessibility.
So potentially, the best way to go about this would be to invite them to a
Most certainly.
meeting to come,
And I-
actually one of these meetings though, so we can start a conversation on what some of the issues
Yeah.
are and then work from there.
And I apologize for it not being clear, I guess, to us all volunteers, what we were really, we-
I think we were under a very tight timeline as well, as I recall, that we had needed to make a decision, and
yeah.
unfortunately.
And I'm not sure that they weren't contacted to provide that information. They may not have been.
I know.
Down about.
Okay. We don't have enough information. Anything else? Fire department, that's all done. We've blown the budget on their, they've got a brand new Cadillac balcony back there.
Looks beautiful.
That was covered under their.
No, I know.
Yeah,
But what I mean is that we spent every dollar out of their, over the last many years, we've done new windows there, we did, and now,
There's
With-
there's a little bit of a balance, so there's 20,000, 26, I think, left in that
oh, okay, great.
Wow,
account.
right.
We just did water, new business, so now, I guess would be old business where we're going to address, the, charter. What we really need to do here, presuming everybody has reviewed it extensively. We've gone over this a number of times, I don't wanna spend too much time on it. I think we've really have nailed it down, and the issue here tonight will be to adopt the proposed changes such that we can move forward with the required public meetings and all that.
I did print out the copy, just so people would have a final copy.
Good.
And Bill and I met with Rob, and he's, Wilmington, and he seemed pleased, I think, with much of it. He had a question or two, which he wanted to research. And the two changes that I added to this from the one we talked about last month is spelled out how trustees would, what the election transition would look like.
How did you figure that calculus out?
How'd I do that?
Yeah, and what'd you come up with? I didn't actually go over that.
Oh, it was, the first year we'd vote for two trustees would be elected for 3-year terms, the next year 2 more, and then the third year, the last person would be elected for a 3-year term. So it'd be a 3-year process.
It's a transition.
Transition.
So does the 1-year position have to stay and be the last one?
No,
It
it
it'll still
doesn't.
be for 3 years, but there'll
No.
only be
No,
one.
but there is a 1-year
But
position.
you only
There's a
want,
1-year position now, so
yes.
would that be the last one we vote in?
it
as
does
a
not
3-year
have to
position?
be. It's
So I'm trying to
just,
think of how it would,
Yeah.
because if you elect the 1 and the 3, or the 1 and a 2,
you just want
And then a two,
to
then you
have
have
2 elected for
3.
3, you'd only want to elect 2 at a time. for
right, but I
3
think if you do
term.
that, because one of the 2 years term is gonna come up, and then
Then it would be a
if we
third
don't
person
wait for,
being,
there'll be, the final year, we'll have 3 people up for election. I think we're trying to avoid that.
yeah, you would.
No,
Unless we save the 3-year position for the last, one, or the 1-year
Well-
position to the last
Yeah, I
one.
think that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
You'd
Well-
keep, you would always,
Because then there would be 1 year where we only have one, that final
Or
year, if we elect a 1-year to a 3-year, then we'd be on a 2-2-1. Every third year, we'd be electing at least.
yes, it's probably
1.
easier if you do the 1-year one last.
I don't know
You
if there's
could-
any other way you can.
will we get
Well-
any recommendation from council up there that goes over?
Yes, I talked
legislative
with
council?
Dick Sears, and once we vote on this, he said to forward the material to him, and he'll pass it on to
Legislative council.
legislative council. So.
And he said, you said in the email, he seemed to think the timeline was Very doable, right?
Yeah, unless there's some major issue along the way, but he said it's,
So once, none of that could happen until the March 3rd or whatever date.
Elections.
Once the vote is affirmative, if it would be, then there's that 2-month period. There's April, May. Very beginning of May is when they try to get out of session, so.
right. Right, but if we could get it to the legislative council beforehand, that would
Maybe so,
identify
they'll-
any issues. And it's possible if it's a major issue, then we have to bump it forward a
Bump it another
year.
year.
Just because of the timelines. The other change here is I wrote in, under the election section, because that, we moved the waiting period of 3 months, or requirement of 3 months residency, because the state law has done away with that. But I did include the state definition of who is a resident.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like that would be helpful to do.
Yeah.
They have to be a resident of the town, not the village.
They have to vote in the village, they have to be a resident of the village.
To vote, but as far as who can be,
Oh, that, no.
No, I'm talking about people going to vote in the election.
right,
It used to say that you had to live here a certain
For
amount of
3
time before you
months.
could even vote.
Vote,
Yeah.
and that's no longer the state law.
Right.
You have to register
Whenever
for 6 days before the election.
so that's the timeline.
That's, yeah, so anyone meets that definition of a resident, which basically is saying you're living in the community with the intent to have that as your primary residence.
Where were the 2 points? What were the 2 numbers of the ones Rob was getting back to us on?
One had to do with, it was the one on 251-804.
Gotcha. Oh, I remember. Yep.
Right, because this is, gives the village the right to pursue its own prosecution if there's damage to the
Right.
water system,
Yep.
as well as whatever the legal consequences might be. And he was going to check, he said that had to fall under the definitions of whether it was a felony or a misdemeanor, and he had to check.
And what was the answer?
It wasn't a felony unless it was imprisonment of over 2 years, something like that. So anyway, it fell with, it doesn't specify what the imprisonment would be, but
Okay.
it was okay. And the other one he wanted to check was, he didn't check it, but he mentioned to us that the whole bonding process, which this removes much of the bonding process, but this is done through a state bonding
Gotcha. So that's
at
all
this
covered by
point, so we
state.
don't have to do all that record keeping.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I couldn't
Those are the
remember what they were
those
when I
are the
read the
two
email.
items that he, yeah.
So, are we ready to, take a motion to vote to accept the hard work that Janice and Bill has put into this over 2 years? And get the process moving to its final stage?
So I move that we accept the changes in the bylaws as been presented.
Charter, I think.
Charter. Sorry.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Right.
Strongly.
Okay, so I do have a timeline, proposed timeline.
And so, Lori wants one of these.
Yes, and actually, I had a copy of one of these for Lori too. Did she get that?
Actually, I have an extra copy. I can give Lori an
Yeah.
extra copy.
Okay,
This one, right? I've got.
Oh, yeah, okay.
yeah. So I worked backwards from March 3rd, which would be when we'd need to be on the ballot. And my suggestions are that we do hearings The first would be January, wait a minute, 27th, and the next one would be February 10th. And that would be, I believe February 10th would piggyback on to one of our meetings here. The first one, I couldn't do that. It wouldn't work. But,
Okay.
so, if it seems okay, then Laurie, we need to work in terms of what would need to go on to the ballot. How, I could be, we may need to do a little research with.
Yeah, we'll have to figure.
Yeah, and I think what Rob was saying is each one of these articles would be a separate ballot article.
You got to vote on every,
Well, you'd list them, yeah.
Right.
Yep. He said there were some that might be able to be combined if it was the same change. And that's one of the questions. Like there were several that had to do with just dropping the
names.
collector of taxes or, and they might be able to be listed. But
That'll be interesting. So, what remind me, such that after the second public meeting, there were some things, obviously on February 11th, you have the final revisions made and posted. Is that the statute?
that's the
20
statute,
days.
but I think you hope you don't have any.
Yeah, because it's already printed. It's already printed on
Right.
the,
that delays it a year.
Yeah,
And this puts us up for this session. Is that right?
yes.
Okay. And it goes before the House, not the Senate, right?
both.
Well, it goes before both, but who presents it?
And Dick originally thought it had to be introduced in the House, but now he's saying he's not so sure about that. He thinks he may be able to do it.
Okay, yeah, I remember there was
So-
something about
So I
that.
have to,
Okay.
That'd be ideal.
yeah,
Relation.
yeah.
So we're done with that.
I have one more. under-
One old business?
Yeah, just, the street light came up earlier. In meeting with Steve about the insurance bit, he also mentioned that one of the streetlights was right out in front of his house. And he said, if we're not, I said, we're in the process, we've had conversations. He said, he'd be happy to speak with Dick Sears about it and see if Dick can throw some
He can
some
do whatever he
leverage
wants.
in, if that would help. Because it doesn't seem like we're really getting anywhere where we need to be heading. You said they haven't even replied to you or responded your last couple, so I can
My
mention.
initial
to Steve.
conversations that I had with them, this is how it went down. It was a misunderstanding back in July about whether it was a light that was out, it was a light that was inadvertently removed when they were doing the process, and I wasn't aware of what, with the committee, the college group that made the recommendations for the switchover, the free switchover we got to all the LEDs, which are wonderful. One of the recommendations they made was a removal of a few lights. I wasn't aware of that. They were, and so they removed one or two of those lights on that street.
Oh, that was a recommendation that came from the
Right.
college.
And through Efficiency Vermont and to the
Right,
official
yeah, yeah.
order of what they're supposed to do in North
Oh, okay.
Bennington.
Yep.
So when I'm calling, because I get a call from Steve on multiple occasions saying, there's a light out on Mechanic Street. So I said, well, it would be most helpful for you to call because you can look at the poll number, they need to know that. But short of that, I'll call them and tell them that there needs to be a light fixed. I get a call 2 days later from CVPS, people who were here in town at the time said, we're here.
There's no light out because they were looking for a.
They were saying, where's the light? I says, I don't know. It's on the outer end of Mechanic Street. That was the last conversation. The assumption, they said, we'll take care of it.
So were they looking for a light that was? They
Presumably.
were probably looking for a light that was burnt out and not.
Or
Possibly,
broken.
yeah. So that was the misunderstanding. So then another 2 months go by with, and I'm sorry, with Mary Lee calling. She walks all the time out there.
Sure.
It's not safe. And I kept thinking, geez, I'm sure they took care of that. Only then do I realize that in fact
It was removed.
it was removed. And so I have made contact with that fellow on a couple times and haven't heard back.
Okay.
So again, I just keep assuming, well, they're just gonna take care of it, but I guess we don't really know for sure.
Okay.
They had said that shouldn't be a problem at all.
Right, they
That
said
they
that
knew
was-
that this happens, and then the neighbor who you weren't aware, didn't show up at the public meeting where it was discussed.
And
Says, wait a minute, the light's out.
Yeah, and the kids left messages with everybody, but, you know.
Right.
People said, that doesn't apply to me, you know.
So it is what it is, but we are gonna get lights back there. If Steve thinks he can facilitate that by calling,
All right.
Dick, he can do what he wants. Might be helpful.
Because I know Dick walks his
The
dog.
power
I've
company-
seen
Dick
one
walks his dog there all the time,
I'm sure
but
you
of
would love
course-
to see another light there.
The power company really doesn't care. They'll put a light up any place you ask them.
It doesn't cost them anything,
Doesn't
once it's
cost them
done.
anything. We pay for it.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think it's just getting all that, and I've got that plus the one then on Water Street, and I'll make contact tomorrow with somebody, whoever I can get a hold of.
Yep.
By phone and try to stipulate exactly what we're looking for. Is that it?
That's enough.
It is. We have executive session for contracts. Two different issues that involve contracts.
So, need a motion to move?
I need a motion to move into executive.
I will make a motion that we move into executive session.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.